Hello, my name is Beth. I am a midwife, mother of 4, and founder of the Bumps Baby Chapter. And welcome to Midwife at Your Cervix podcast. Today we have Jamie on the podcast. So Jamie has 2 children. She's done hypnobirthing with both of her births, but found that she had 2 very different birth situations. Jamie talks to us today about how she used hypnobirthing in both of these very different birth situations. If you like the podcast, please remember to like and follow and give us a rating. Hey Jamie, thanks so much for coming on to Midwife at Your Cervix, my new podcast. Could you just start off by telling everyone a little bit about yourself?
Firstly, thank you for having me. I am so excited that you started a podcast. It's been a long time coming and I'm just so excited about it. So a bit about me. So I am a mum of 2. My children are 6 and 2, Harper and Kit. We live in Gloucestershire. I've also got 2 very naughty dogs and I run a TikTok account all about budgeting and sort of living family life to our best, but on a budget in these wild financial times.
What's your TikTok account called?
It is called Savvy Jamie on TikTok, and on Instagram I am Savvy Jamie Rose.
So you're on today to talk about hypnobirthing.
I am.
And all of your experiences, because obviously you've said you've had two births.
Yep.
And what was it that got you into hypnobirthing? How did you first hear about it? What made you go?
So I was pregnant with my first baby and I was petrified of birth. I would probably go as far as saying I had a phobia of birth. I think I spent my whole life, like sadly many people, hearing so many negative stories about how birth is awful. I thought it was going to be this just catastrophic day that I just wanted to be over and done with and just have my baby.
Yeah, like block out of your mind.
100%.
Like just get through it.
Yeah.
Your teeth, bear it.
Yeah. Because in my head, I was like, sorry, a baby comes out of where? You know, like,
They
no.
what?
Yeah. And I'm also quite needle phobic. So I think that too, I was like, and the thought of having like cannulas and it just, everything about it was like, no.
Yeah.
And obviously I was overjoyed to be pregnant. So it was kind of sad that I had this huge fear over what was going to happen in 9 months' time.
Yeah.
So I can't remember how I fully first heard about hypnobirthing, but I started to see it. I think it was quite new. This is 2016. I think it was sort of like up and coming. Told my husband about it. He thought it was a load of BS.
Hippie nonsense.
Yes. Yeah. He was like, how is this going to help you have a baby? But then I showed him a video on YouTube by Giovanna Fletcher, who just had a baby and was raving with Tom about hypnobirthing. And so Austin agreed. I think he agreed more just to appease me. I think he was like, you're clearly terrified. So if this is going to help you 1%, then
now supporting you rather than doing it for yourself.
Yeah. Now he's a total convert. He loves hypnobirthing. He even told me he's got a colleague at work expecting their first baby, and he's like, "Have you heard about hypnobirthing?" And I was so proud. I was like, "Yes, you tell them." So that was how I first heard about hypnobirthing.
So you did hypnobirthing then with your first.
Yeah.
What was that like? Like what? How did it change you? What did you then expect your birth to be like? Like what was your plans for your first birth?
So I really wanted an unmedicated birth with my first. I think largely because I was scared of needles. So I thought as unmedicated as in terms of anything that doesn't require me to have a cannula.
Okay. So you didn't want a cannula, pain relief, like drugs? Like what was your...
So I was hoping to go for, I wanted gas and air. I was hoping to go for just gas and air. And I was kind of kind to myself. I think through hypnobirthing, I thought, I'll take more if I need it. Like, I didn't want to set like a rigid birth plan of like, we're doing this, we're not doing this. So everything was very much like, let's see how it goes, especially when you've not had a baby before. Like you have no clue how you're going to cope with birth. Yeah. Or, what your baby's going to do in birth. Everything's different, isn't it? So so I wanted a water birth, really wanted a water birth.
So for you, it wasn't about, you weren't scared of or worried about the pain as such. It was more you were worried about the needles and any drama that comes with that. So that was fair. Like,
I think
was
so.
About the pain as well,
I think I was a bit. I think I'd grown up my whole life as well being told I've got a low pain threshold, which actually I don't think I do. I think that's quite a thing that a lot of women maybe are told, that we're like quite weak and don't have high pain thresholds. And so again, I was thinking, I'm not going to cope. I'm going to be the one like screaming the place down. not that it's that a bad thing if you scream the place down.
No.
Do what you want to do, but
yeah,
I just didn't want it to be this awful day.
yeah,
Yeah.
fine. So when you did your hypnobirthing then, so how did that change your like attitude towards birth and things?
I was so excited to give birth. So I did an in-person course and I was ready for it. I was excited, which I never ever imagined. I'd go from being terrified to being like, I'm gonna have a baby.
Yeah.
So it completely changed everything. I think I just felt like I could handle it. I felt like I understood what was going to be happening with my body, and I felt like I had tools in place to keep myself calm, to keep myself grounded. And also Austin had a role. I think that's a big thing about hypnobirthing too.
Yeah, it is.
I think a lot of birth partners can feel like, what are they meant to do in labour apart from like have their hands squeezed? And I think hypnobirthing gives birth partners a role, doesn't it? And things they can do to feel like they're an active participant.
Yeah. And that is so important for partners, isn't it? Because, you know, is you're as a partner, you're like the biggest oxytocin source in that room. So you can be the difference between like making that day or that mum feeling alone. Like partners really do make such an impact. Massively. And we can see the difference as midwives when like some women are actually, they don't actually really want their partners too close to them, which is equally fine as well. But then you get others who you can kind of tell that they need a little bit more reassurance of things.
Yeah.
And sometimes some partners are obviously better than others in the birth room. Like we see a good spectrum. But yeah, they really do make or break a birth.
I think also they know you better than anyone.
Yeah.
So like obviously they're a source of oxytocin, but I think also, you know, I've had friends who have wanted midwives to have discussions with their partner, and their partner sort of like relays information to their wife because they are the ones that know how to say it in a way that isn't going to freak her out or whatever. So I think things like that, like Austin during our birth, funnily enough, I didn't really want to be touched. I was like, don't touch me. He started like trying to do like some like nice, like soft touch massage that we practiced all through pregnancy. And I was like, get your hands off me.
Yeah.
But like, he did exactly what I wanted. He did everything I said to him. He did it. So he was amazing. He was like the best birth partner I could have imagined.
Because like you said, they are the ones that are practicing with you at home, or at least they've maybe done the hypnobirthing with you. Mm-hmm. So then they know what your counting is, or like what your breathing is, or what visualizations you've been practicing.
Yeah.
So they're like the best person when you feel like you're losing your mind. Yeah. Because there is always a time, isn't there, in labour,
for sure,
where you feel like you need to like grab all of your techniques. Like usually it's partners that can be like, remember this is your favourite birth affirmation is there.
Yeah, yeah. And even just telling you like Austin every now and then would be like, you're doing amazing.
Yeah.
And then I think I'd tell him to shut up and stop talking, but equally I still was like,
it's funny what you said about the massage as well, actually, because I'm the same. I don't like being touched, and also I don't like a tickly massage.
Yeah, okay, so I normally do, but apparently not
labour. Yeah, but I saw a video the other day of someone who she was like doing these things for women and mums, and she said that tickly massages, when you're feeling like you've got lots going on already, a tickly massage is like a bit of a sensory overload. And she said a deeper massage, you know, like rather a hold and pressure, actually makes you feel secure.
It's funny you say that, because I actually have part of that in my birth. Should I tell you about my birth?
Yeah, go on.
So my first birth. So my first birth was everything I could have dreamed of. It was like, if you ordered a birth, that was what came. And I'm not being smug, because I'm going to go on to talk about my second birth in a minute. I had a lovely water birth. I didn't need any intervention. I had some gas and air. But it's funny what you say, because there was a point in my labour where, correct me if I'm wrong, but can you push, they don't like you to push for more than 2 hours. Is that right?
Yeah.
So I was...
the 2 hours, if you're in a midwife-led unit,
which I was,
then they will either, if they can see parts of babies' heads and babies coming well, then they will most likely encourage you to keep going, but keeping an eye on the time. Yeah. But if there's no sign of baby, then your midwife would be advising you to transfer to a consultant unit.
So we got to that point. So everything had been going really well. I'd actually got to the hospital at, I was fully dilated. So I'd been so zen at home and chilling. I'd had my lunch after my I should start at the beginning, shouldn't I?
Go on.
My birth.
Start from the top.
So I remember one of my friends was pregnant. She was due after me, and she texted me it was a week to my due date, and she texted me at 5 o'clock in the morning saying, "Welcome to the world," and her baby had been born. I was over the moon for her, but I remember I burst into tears to Austin. I was like, but it was my turn. Like, she was due a week after me. And I'd had a couple of other friends who they'd been having their babies and they were due after me. And I was like, this isn't fair. Like,
it's not how
we're all first-time mums. Everyone's meant to be late. And I've still got a week to my due date and they're all having their babies and it was my turn. And I was really upset. I now realise I was really upset because I was really hormonal, because about 2 hours later, Austin had gone downstairs to make me a bacon sandwich. My parents had arrived to lay the floor. You know, it always happens on the worst day, to lay new floor. They were helping us lay new floor downstairs because I was a week to my due date. So I wasn't going to have a baby because first-time mums are always
late.
And I heard this massive pop in my tummy. And I remember calling Austin up and saying, can babies break their neck in the womb? Because honestly, it was like a snap. He was like, you are mental. But I was like, Google it. Like, go on, Dr. Google, shouldn't use it. But I was like, find out. Because honestly, it was the biggest noise ever.
So people describe it as well as like an elastic band, like pinging their tummy sometimes. That they feel like they can feel it.
I heard it. And I think because I was laying down, nothing came out. And then I sort of like half sat up and just like this gush, like in the movies, just like flooded out. There was no mistaking, like, have I done a wee or is this my waters? It was like, no, this is my waters. So we rang the hospital. I was having no contractions. They sent us in to see if there was any meconium or anything. Just check baby was fine. Everything was fine, but I was having no contractions. And they were like, we're going to book you in for an induction tomorrow morning.
Yeah.
Which I was livid about, because in my head, I was like, excuse me, I'm in labour. Like, I don't need an induction. Like, did you not hear that my waters are broken?
So when you did hypnobirthing and didn't do antenatal education. So you did like your coping strategies, techniques, but then not so much with the what happens.
Absolutely. And I do think, and again, like, I think we'll come on to this more in my second birth, a combination of the two is so important. So yeah, so I was booked in for an induction and I went home and I was a bit annoyed because I was like, I don't want to be induced. Like, I'm trying to avoid cannulas. I'm going to have a cannula if I get induced. So we made it our mission. I was on my birth ball. We went for a walk, did all of this. I started to have twinges. And I just remember having faith. I just thought, this is going to happen. Because I think I'm a big believer in like, just thinking about the best. And like, if the worst happens, maybe you're ready for it and it can happen, but always just have hope and have faith, and maybe a bit of blind faith sometimes. I'm thinking, I'm going to do this. Like, this baby's coming.
Such an attitude to have, though.
I think especially around birth. But again, I'm not naive to think then stuff won't deviate from that plan. I think you need to prepare for that as well. But yeah, so luckily for me, my contractions started and we phoned the hospital because on my app, they were like close together. It looked like I was like in full labor. And I spoke to the midwife on the phone because they always want to talk to the mum, don't they? I now realise to see how well the mum's coping.
Yeah, and almost like timing your contractions as well. Like if we're chatting to you for 10 minutes and you haven't had a contraction, then kind of get the vibe that they're more spaced out.
So they told me to get in the bath and just like try and relax. So I did that, had a bath, got out again. Everything felt like it ramped up again. Phoned again, the same thing. They said, why don't you have a bath? Okay. So we got in the bath and I just said, I can't get comfortable, Austin. Like, this doesn't feel right. And I said, you know what? Let's go to the hospital. I know they've told us not to come yet, but let's just go in. So we went in. Obviously, they're happy to receive you. They're not like, sorry, we didn't want you to come. No, their advice was to stay home, but obviously they weren't, when we got there, they were like, oh, come on in. The car ride to the hospital was probably one of the hardest things. I was like heavily contracting, and you're in a position, aren't you, where like I don't want to be in that position.
You don't want to be sat like on a chair, do you? No. When you've got contractions, you want to be like flipped over or standing or something.
So I remember the car ride being terrible, and then we obviously got to the hospital and we left our car where you're allowed to leave it there just to get yourself in, and then your partner has to go and like take it away. So we went in and they were a bit like chill, and I was saying everything's difficult, I'd really like some pain relief, it's full on, and they were a bit, don't think they thought I was in full labour. I think because I was quite chill still. And I remember the midwife, she was lovely, but she was a little bit patronising. She was like, before I can give you anything, I just need to examine you. And I was like, okay, that's fine. But every time she tried to examine me, I'd have a contraction, and I literally was like nearly kicking her in the head because my body was just making me go back over. Yeah. And it was just like, no. So I was then going, and she kept saying, Jamie, like, if you want some pain relief, I'm going to need to examine you. So eventually she examined me, and honestly, literally her face, she looked so shocked, and she just went, oh, and she turned to the woman next to her who was a student midwife and said, get the gas and air going. And then she said, "Again, get someone else to get the pool going." And she turned to me and she went, "You're fully dilated." And I was a bit like, what?
What?
But equally, I was a bit like, I thought so. I didn't think so. But I was a bit like, well, this baby does look like it's about to come.
Yeah.
So remember, they sort of like left the room, I guess, because I was in like a little side room.
Yeah,
they
like
left the room.
assessment type room.
Yeah. I obviously had no pants on because I'd had my examination. So I remember it's like being on all fours, like leaning over the bed, and I felt like I was doing a poo, which is obviously what it does feel like for a lot of women when the baby's coming. And then they said, "The pool's ready for you." And so I still had my top on. I went to like just walk out, and she was like, "Oh, let's just wrap this around you," because I didn't care anymore. I was like, "But I'm giving birth. I don't care what anyone thinks."
Yeah.
And then
Get me to that pool and that gas in there.
Yeah. And then I got into the pool, and Austin says it was so funny because as she turned around to say, "If you want to take your clothes off and get in the pool," I was already naked and like basically diving into the pool. And I found the pool water such a relief, like to my contractions. It honestly was incredible. Yeah. And so then I was obviously, baby was coming. I was pushing. I got to the 2-hour mark, or I think I was near the 2-hour mark. Yeah. And they'd said, or my midwife said to me, if the baby doesn't come soon, we might think about transferring you. And I thought, no, like everything has gone so well. Like I've avoided like an induction. Everything's going well. And they did press the emergency buzzer. And so it did get a little bit stressful. But I remember thinking from my hypnobirthing, I remember thinking every time they would, what's it called? The Doppler?
The with the sonic.
Yeah. So obviously when you're in the water, I was wireless monitored, and I don't know how often.
So seconds pushing is every 5 minutes.
Yeah.
Or
so
like after.
Every time she'd put it on my belly, I remember I used it as a grounding technique. And I thought, if you're stressed now, your baby's going to get stressed. So it reminded me to like use my breathing and just calm my body. And then I think every time she did it, it was like a reminder of that. And so then I remember when I knew they were coming in the room, I closed my eyes. I'm not really sure. I never read my notes. I think maybe she was getting a bit distressed, but she was so close to coming. They explained that as she was descending, she was then going straight back up again. So every time,
very normal for all births, but more so with a first time mum.
Is it? And she explained it to me. It's like a tennis ball. Like when she did finally come out, she had her hand over her face. So that was obviously why. Yeah, she's been cheeky ever since. So she did, you know. But I remember going back to the grounding thing. When everyone was in the room, I remember shutting my eyes. I don't know how people were there. I don't think it was loads, but obviously more than just 2 midwives. I remember a new midwife put her hand on my shoulder and squeezed my shoulder. And it was like the squeeze literally took over my whole body, and it just grounded me and calmed me and like sent me just one shoulder. But it was like, she just like made me remember that I was like present and I was like having my baby. And then she came out like literally in that moment. And I remember I'd almost been so focused on like staying calm and zen that I'd actually like forgotten I was having a baby. And so the midwife was behind me going, "Jamie, catch the baby, catch the baby." And she just like flew out into the pool, was just like in the pool. And I was sort of like, oh yeah, there's a baby down there.
Oh my God.
And then the midwife like helped me get the baby up. It was funny. And then she was just like on my chest. And it was just the most amazing moment ever. And I felt like Wonder Woman. I literally thought, run a marathon now. Like, I'm just amazing. And again, my smugness will end in a minute of like how zen things were. But it was amazing. And hypnobirthing for that type of birth, straightforward birth, was incredible and did me well.
Yeah. Oh, Jamie, that was such a lovely story. That was literally like, I'm sure if there's first time mums or even second time mums, third, fourth, listening to this, I bet they're like, yes, please.
Yeah.
I'll take one.
I'll order one of those.
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely.
Hey guys, I'm interrupting this podcast to talk to you about the sponsor of today's podcast, which is LV. LV is a brand that I really love for so many reasons. I also feel super lucky because they have given me a discount code to share exclusively with you all. So listen up. LV is a health and lifestyle brand that have developed smarter technology for women and, like me, are committed to empowering women by developing products aimed at improving their health and lives. Breastfeeding can feel like a full-time job, especially in those early days. Pumping milk can be a great way to share feeding with a partner or friends and family to give you, as a new mum, a break to either catch up on sleep or just have a well-deserved rest from feeding. The LV Stride is a cutting-edge breast pump from LV. It gives hospital-grade performance, yet is ultra-quiet. It allows you to pump hands-free by placing it in your bra, and it is lightweight enough to be comfortably worn under clothing. allowing you to pump whilst you go about your day. Such a lifesaver when you have a new baby in tow. LV are giving you 15% off the LV Stride until the end of July 2023 using the code BUMPTOBABY. That's BUMPTOBABY. This discount is not available in conjunction with any other offer. And let's get back to the pod. So you then had another baby.
I did.
And how did that go?
So I found myself pregnant right before COVID started. So it was a wild time with that anyway. I'm also had developed I had a 4-year gap between my children. I had developed an autoimmune disease, which meant A, I was shielding during the pandemic, but B, it also meant I was consultant-led. So even though I had a very straightforward birth, so because my autoimmune disease causes inflammation in the body, they obviously wanted to monitor me a bit more because inflammation in the body and pregnancy can not always be the best thing.
Yeah.
So I was consultant-led. So it was obviously all new to me because I hadn't been consultant-led before. I'd never seen a consultant. So this pregnancy, I did hypnobirthing and antenatal education combined. I did the Bump to Baby chapter. And I tell everyone about it because I think it's amazing. So obviously I'm sure people listening will know, but if they don't, it's all the hypnobirthing stuff you need, but it also is combined with everything you need if you're consultant-led too, isn't it? And beyond. So it's like all about the physiology of birth, but also it covers caesareans, it covers inductions, everything. Yeah. And obviously I wasn't planning any of that because I have had a straightforward vaginal birth and I thought, well, that's what I'm getting again. Like I put my order form in and I was like, that's what I'm getting.
Same again, please.
Absolutely. And I thought, I've done it before. My body knows what it's doing. So I was consultant-led, but there was no talk of like my birth being any different. I'd started to talk about I'd like to give birth on a birth unit again. In Gloucester, where we live, the birth unit is attached to the delivery suite, so that's quite handy because I always thought I could just get transferred quite easily, not through an ambulance or anything. So that kind of gave me some reassurance. And I think my consultant also felt, okay, if you want to give birth on a midwife-led unit, the one at Gloucester is fine, rather than we have Stroud and Cheltenham, which are midwife-led alone. I think I've had to maybe negotiate a bit more if I wanted one of those. So I got to 38 weeks and they started to talk about wanting to induce me. And it was a little bit frustrating because pregnancy had actually put my autoimmune disease into remission. So they were saying that they were advising induction because when you've got inflammation in your body, the further into pregnancy you go past, I think it's like past 37 weeks is maybe the stats, there is a increase of stillbirth. And obviously when they tell you that and you're pregnant and all your hormones are raging and you're nurturing this little life, of course you're thinking, oh my goodness, I don't want to do anything that increases my risk of stillbirth.
Yeah.
But hypnobirthing and doing my antenatal education had actually taught, and I also at the time I've worked as a researcher, so I feel like I'm quite stats driven.
Yeah.
So I remember asking the consultant, well, what's the statistic? And they looked at me like almost like, so shocked that someone would even ask that, and they didn't have it. And they were like, well, we need to find out. And I thought, can't come in here and tell me it's going to increase my risk of stillbirth, but
give me
not
some numbers.
Yeah, but not tell me what the increase was.
And that must be really hard as well from both sides, because you want to make a decision, an informed decision.
Yeah.
So you want to know numbers so you can actually measure it, because an increase could be an increase from like 0.003 to 0.006. Like, that's technically a double, but it's small.
And it's how they think someone say it. It's double, but actually it's a 0.1%. And I think, I can't remember the exact stat, but when I finally did get it, it was something like that. So I negotiated that I would have more growth scans and that I would basically see it week by week from this was at 38 weeks. So I had 2 growth scans a week, and I also had monitoring. I remember going in on a Saturday morning and it was like nobody, there was like a little side room, having some monitoring. And when I got to 39.5 weeks, my baby was seeming a bit unhappy. So he hadn't grown, he was a big baby. I kept being told he's a big baby, which was stressing me out as well a bit. It annoyed me too that I kept getting told he's a big baby, because I'm really a big believer in like, growth scans aren't always accurate, are they? And also, just because you've got a big baby, it doesn't mean that you can't give birth to a big baby and still have an amazing birth.
Oh, totally. And people throw the words big baby around all the time. I remember as a student when I used to work in community, and you work with loads of different midwives.
Yeah.
They would often palpate which is, where you have your bump and your baby felt to determine a position, the amount of times midwives, and even as a student myself, I would comment, oh yeah, oh, I think this big baby, or like, oh, loads of fluid, or oh, not much. Like, we'd make comments, but actually those comments mean nothing, because we feel a lot of bumps, but actually we are literally feeling a bump. We don't know. And even then when you get scanned, it's still quite inaccurate. Again, but
I had a growth scan with Harper and they thought she was big, and she was a 6-pounder, so she wasn't.
Wow.
And actually one of the first things I said when she came out was, she's tiny, because I could feel that like she was small. So I was a little bit like, is he though, is he a big baby? But I think what I was told, so I went for another growth scan and he hadn't grown, he'd stayed the same. And what I did get told by the consultant when I said, but how accurate are they? They said the actual weights itself might not be accurate, but if indicating a lack of growth is pretty accurate, because they're basing it on the last measurements. So actually the fact that he hadn't grown for a week was probably quite accurate. And also I'd gone in for some monitoring, and again, I don't understand it fully, but I just kept getting told he's not doing exactly what we'd want him to be doing. So he wasn't like...
So when you say monitoring, you mean the CTG?
Just so like the belly band.
The belly bands. You've got one measuring baby's heart rate, and the other one measuring if you're having a contraction, any contractions. And it's basically a continuous monitoring of baby's heart rate. And then within that, it's a snapshot of how baby is doing at that moment. And there's things that we look for as midwives, like accelerations, which is when baby will go up to show that they've moved. Like if we ran and then stopped running, it would go up and then come back down. So it's like things like that we look for.
So I think when he was moving, he wasn't having accelerations as they'd like them to be. So he was just a bit, again, nothing like majorly alarming.
No deceleration.
I don't think so. Not at this point.
He wasn't moving.
And so that, and the fact that he hadn't grown, this was a Friday, I was 39.5 weeks. A consultant came in and she said, look, I think your time's up. She didn't say that. It was very much still my choice. She was an amazing consultant, and I kind of agreed. I was like, let's. And so on my bang on my 40th week, which was Monday, do they do inductions over the weekend? I think I declined one because I didn't want to go on Halloween. So Halloween was the Saturday. And I remember thinking, my daughter loves Halloween. I was like, I can't. She already doesn't want a brother. I can't take you. I can't take Halloween from her. So I remember saying,
Halloween is now your brother's.
And in my head too, Monday was my 40th week. So I felt like I'd gone to term. I'd gone to my due date. My body hadn't, for whatever reason, gone into labour itself, even though Harper had come at 39 weeks. So again, I really thought he'd come early. Because you're told that as well, aren't you? All the myths we get told.
Well, like some people you hear where they're like, I always go 10 days over. Or I'll always go 2 weeks early. But even for my own, I've had a term +2, 37 weeks, 34 weeks, and 39 weeks.
And
actually, I would say the majority of people, it's very random.
It's random, isn't it? So I went in for my induction, and I actually, so over that weekend, I remember I knuckled down with my hypnobirthing. I remember going through the induction module. I went through the caesarean module, and to backtrack, what hypnobirthing had really done for me is it had reminded me that with both my pregnancies that I had to make choices. So I think what really helped me going into my induction with my son was that I thought, I have chosen induction for these reasons. I've asked the right questions, and I feel like this is what is best for me and my baby. And I think that's key, isn't it?
I love that. And I wish that more health professionals, more midwives, more doctors made sure that when a woman has come for their induction, that they are going into it knowing that they don't have to be there. Like, yes, it may be advised to you because of, preeclampsia, obstetric cholestasis, maybe post-dates, like whatever the reason is. Yes, that may be advised to you, but at the end of the day, you can choose to be there or you can choose to not be. And I think that makes a massive difference to how you then continue.
For sure.
Going with your birth, like it sets your headspace. Like, actually, I chose to be here because I feel from the doctor's recommendation that it's a good choice for my baby.
And you're not just like an inactive participant. You're very much like the middle key part of it.
You are the main character.
I love that. So I went in and I had an induction, and I really wanted to have the balloon, but I was like not. Just be a bit dilated for that, don't you? My body.
Be able to put the
so they wouldn't have. They did an examination. So they started off with the pessary, and they said it could take a long time. we'll start with pessary, but then you might go on to the hormone drip. And again, I still don't like needles. I really wanted to avoid a cannula or anything. So I was like going to do this. So she gave me that. And because it was COVID, Austin was there while they put the pessary in, and then he had to go home.
So the pessary is prostaglandins.
Yeah.
And your one would have been 24 hours.
Okay.
But in other hospitals, it can be different. So yeah, it can be like a 6-hour gel or tablet.
I heard about the gels.
Yeah, there's like different things, but what you're talking about is the 24-hour one, isn't it? And it's like a little tablet on a string. Yeah, like a little mini tampon.
The strings are there, but you can't like feel it or anything. No. I couldn't even feel the string or anything. So yeah, so Austin was home, and then I went out for a walk at the advice of my midwife, I guess, to like try and get things moving. And then before I go on to what happened next, I'm just going to say, because I really feel passionately about not sharing birth horror stories.
Yeah.
So whilst to probably quite a few people listening, this might sound like a horror story, it's not. And also it's very rare, isn't it? Like you obviously, I told you my birth story before, so like you know that what did happen is really unlikely.
Yeah.
But I guess I'm talking about it because it still is my birth story, and it still is how I used hypnobirthing to when things deviated from the plan. So at this point too, I still wanted a water birth. I still was like, I'm gonna get a water birth. And I was also in the delivery suite, and Gloucester has one water birth pool.
Yeah, in the consultant.
Yeah. So I was like, that is mine. Like no one else better come in and take
like
it.
Your name on the door.
And so when I got in to have my induction, I got told nobody was using it. So also I was like, but things better get moving then, because that room is mine. But what was amazing actually is the woman that delivered Harper was on shift, and she like popped her head in and like said hello to me, and that was really nice. It felt like it got me like feeling really pumping. Well. Yeah. I was like, I'm here again. Like I ordered another one. So it was lovely. And then so she checked me and she said, oh, you're 4 centimeters, which is established labour. Yeah. So that meant I could go to the delivery suite. Yeah. Everything then is a bit hazy. So
because you would have also been on a monitor then. Are you back on a CTG monitor at this point?
I think I must have been. So again, during all of this, I'd had some on and off monitors, and again, Kit had just been a bit funny. He'd been, they weren't like really unhappy, but they had sent my CTG scan to a consultant to have a look at, to sign it off that he was still happy for us to go ahead, because he wasn't really unhappy, but he also wasn't like a really thriving, happy baby.
Yeah.
You know, something was going on.
Yeah.
So this is when everything just felt like a whirlwind. I don't remember being transferred from the ward to the delivery suite, but obviously I was. And
that's one floor.
You really ramped up. I was suddenly in a lot of pain. And I wouldn't necessarily describe my first birth as pain. I'd call it more like an intensity.
Yeah, like strength.
Yeah.
You can feel the strength.
So I was now in the delivery suite. I had my midwife and a new midwife because it was near shift change. I think they were doing like a bit of a handover. And I think the consultant was in and out. I can't really remember. Austin was calling my mum in the bathroom because I wanted to encapsulate my placenta, and we didn't have the cooler bag that you were meant to have. Because I think when he came to visit me, we'd been told, oh, you'll be here for days. So he just hadn't taken it out of our freezer to bring it. So he's on the phone to my mum because she's here looking after Harper. She doesn't have her car with her. So she's getting in a taxi to come to the delivery suite. Well, not to come, but, you know, to meet him outside. At this point, I am in so much pain. I remember rolling over onto my front and screaming. And even at this point in my head, I was like, I don't scream when I give birth. Like, I didn't scream last.
Yeah, like something's happening.
Yeah. And at that point, my waters broke and thick meconium came out. We're allowed to be explicit a bit on this, aren't we? Like, my husband said it looked like I had diarrhea coming out my vagina. And I know from other people that sometimes meconium is just like a green tint, isn't it?
Yeah, so it depends how much water is surrounding baby.
Yeah.
If baby's had a little poo, little meconium in a big sack of water, then when the waters go, it's going to be like a tinge, like a little bit greeny. Whereas if there's not a lot of water around baby and then baby does a poo, it comes out literally without being diluted.
So Austin at first thought it was my poo. He thought I had diarrhea, and then he realised it wasn't coming out of my bottom, it was coming out of my vagina. He was like, oh, and then I remember turning to the midwife and saying, I had gas and air at this point, and just like bursting into tears and saying, I can't have a water birth now, can I? And she said no, but I think she was also in her head thinking, and you're probably not having a vagina birth either. Like, I look back, the irony. So yeah, everything was really intense at this point. And it was all, this was, so my labour itself is from when my contraction started to birth is 40 minutes. So that sort of tells you what a tiny period of time this is all happening in. So I remember then the consultant came in, and as he knelt down at my bedside, they're so calm, aren't they? Even in like real emergencies.
And I know your doctor, who you're talking
Dr.
about.
Chris, just like a legend, love him so much. He just knelt down, he put his hands together really calmly, and he just said to me, your baby is very unhappy. And I knew what he was going to say, and I interrupted him and I said, do a C-section. And then I didn't have to sign anything because it needed to be done very quickly. Because at this point, so they put a fetal electrode on Kit's head, which I had been asked to consent for, but I don't remember it happening. Yeah. And he barely had a heartbeat. So I think he was very unhappy.
So a fetal scalp electrode can be called an FSE, and it goes on the top of baby's head and it picks up baby's heart rate. And with the FSE, there is less interference, because sometimes with the abdominal monitors, the CTG, we can pick up mum's pulse. Yeah. So an FSE, you can tell more if that's baby's heart rate or there's confusion with mum's.
Yes. And so thank you. And so because he looked really unhappy on the one around my belly, that's why they'd done that. Yeah. And apparently it was really interesting because after he was born, the student midwife asked me if she could take a photo of it to take to her lectures. So apparently his heart monitor was just very interesting. Like it showed him like becoming more and more unhappy, and then it showed the change. Anyway, so I was then rushed to theatre. I do not remember being rushed to theatre, and I was put out under general anaesthetic. I'm assuming because to do an epidural, it would have taken time to set in, time they didn't have. Is that right?
That's exactly right. So with a spinal anaesthetic, a quick one, by the time you've sat up, got into the right position, and it's gone in, and then even a really quick one is to put in is probably, I don't know, 5-10 minutes, and then to work is another few minutes. But if you don't have that time, because it's dangerous for baby,
and it was done in minutes,
then a general anaesthetic would be your best option.
So I was put out into general. My husband had to stay out of the room. But even in that moment of being rushed to theatre, I didn't feel scared, which is like really key, isn't it? And I remember thinking, again, just like when Harper was being born, I remember thinking, even though I knew this was a real emergency, I remember thinking, don't panic, because your baby can hear your heartbeat, just like with Harper. And if he hears your heartbeat going crazy, then he's going to think something's wrong. So just like let him think everything's chill. And that gave me like a tiny bit of control, and I felt like I was still doing something to help. But I remember
that is it, like incredible that even in the midst of a lot of drama, you can still feel some sense of control. And I know that can sound really silly, because you're like, well, obviously you're not in control because you know you're on a bed, your baby's unhappy, like you're going for a caesarean, you're having to have a general, like those are all, you know, when we say like you shouldn't really say you have to, it's your choice. Like your choice then was very limited.
I didn't really have a choice, even though I did.
You did.
The outcome would have been
catastrophic. Awful. Yeah. So it is more you had to. Yeah. You had to have a general, you had to have a caesarean. But that choice for you was that you could choose to remain calm in that situation. And you made a choice to keep your baby safe.
Absolutely. And I understood what was happening. And I think that was the key of me doing the antenatal education, is that as soon as Dr. Chris sort of told me the baby was unhappy, I knew what was coming next. Yeah. And, you know, I interrupted him from saying, this is our advice to you, because I knew what was coming. And I think that was from my antenatal education. Yeah. And it didn't feel scary. I think it felt like the best decision. It felt like that's what's needed. And actually, you know, I was in a lot of pain, and I knew based on the pain I was in that something was not going well. Yeah. So I just thought, this is what's happening. I didn't actually understand I was going to get put to sleep, I don't think. They must have said it to me, but I don't remember.
You don't remember the conversation?
No, obviously they must have. But I think literally from me leaving that room to me being in the theatre was a matter of minutes. And suddenly you've got this huge team around you. And I think I just also remember thinking, everyone here is so skilled. And everyone's goal here, without being dramatic, but it was dramatic, everyone's goal is to keep me and my baby alive. That is what they want the outcome to be. This is like a team, and they're like here support me,
and make you feel like included and respected, and like still an element of control, like you know how you've always spoke about Dr. Chris and how he like came down to a level and the way he spoke to you.
Yeah.
Like things like that you don't forget.
No.
Like you won't forget
For
how
sure.
someone treated you in a situation which could have been incredibly scary for you.
Absolutely. And so I remember the anaesthetist putting the cannula in. That's like the last thing I remember.
Like,
And I remember thinking, fucking irony, because that's all I
did not want this.
Yeah. I'm like, I didn't want it, and now you're doing it, and I'm having like probably what was my plan Z of how to give birth to a baby. But yeah, so Kit was born. He had to be resuscitated. He was very, very poorly. He was on a CPAP machine, so like a lot of oxygen. He had to be resuscitated, and he was in the NICU. So when I then woke up from being under general, this is another thing actually that I will add, is I think nobody wants to think about worst case scenarios.
Yeah.
Which mine was, one of my lesser what I wanted. But I think it's really important to have those conversations with your partner. So one of the things that I said to my husband way back when we were having our first baby was, if me and the baby have to be separated for some reason, and this might make me sound really selfish, but this was just my choice. I said, I want you to stay with me unless something really terrible is happening with the baby, that like the baby needs you there. If the baby is in the NICU or in special care and it's fine, please stay with me, because I know that I will be like losing it. I'll be spiraling. And so to be fair to my husband, Kit got taken to the NICU. Austin did go to the NICU for a little bit. And then when he felt like things were sort of like stable, he came back to me, and he was there when I woke up. And I think if he hadn't have been there when I woke up, it would have been like...
You would have felt awful.
Yeah.
Panicky.
Yeah. So I'm so glad that I had that conversation with him before.
Yeah.
Not that I ever thought I'd be put under general, but
no,
I didn't mean it in that scenario, but I just meant it in general.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that was a really key thing. So I woke up, baby wasn't there. They had some concerns the baby might be brain damaged. So it was a really like awful thing to happen, to wake up from birth and not even know if your baby's okay.
Yeah.
But every single healthcare professional, every single midwife that I had deal with me afterwards was just incredible. They were so validating. I think I really wanted to wear the strong badge of like, I'm fine and like my baby's fine and that's all that matters to my baby. Every single midwife, student midwife that met me, all of them validated. They were all like, you've been through something very traumatic. Because GA sections are really rare, aren't they?
They are. Yeah, they are. I'm not sure on what the actual stat is. I would take a guess that it's probably somewhere between, I don't know, maybe like 1%.
Yeah.
Like it's unusual. I can probably count on my hand, maybe 2, 3 that I've never actually been in with someone actually with general anesthesia. It's always cared for them after.
Yeah.
So it's not something that I've come across loads, but it does. It has a big impact, isn't it, on when you wake up with things like even like bonding with your baby and things like, because you don't actually see your baby being born.
Strange. Yeah. And we couldn't hold him for a while because he was having brain scans and things.
Yeah.
Yeah, but even talking about like the validation of it, like the consultant came and saw me every day while I was in the hospital. He came to see me, and again, I remember thinking in my head, like, you're so busy, but like you're coming to see me. And again, and again, he was like, I just wanted to check on you, like you went through something really traumatic, and I think all of that really helped me to like think, you know what, like you did go through something traumatic. I need to like validate that in myself.
Yeah, to start the processing of it.
Yeah,
first know, don't you, that actually it wasn't necessarily normal or it was a traumatic experience.
Yeah. And we had some counselling after, because again, talking of bonding with the baby, so we didn't hold Kit. And then when you have a baby in the NICU, which obviously because your third was in the NICU, it's so strange. I almost feel like I was in a lot of pain, so I struggled to pick him up. I'd need like help. He had loads of wires on him. I didn't want to knock them out. So like to access your baby, you have to have help. And that was so weird, because like when Harper was born, she was like my baby, she was on my chest, and then like she was mine. Like I didn't have to ask anyone if I could do this with her. Whereas with Kit, I remember having to say like, is it okay if I do this? And I'm like, Harper made him a card, and I remember saying like, is it okay if I put this card like next to his bed? And like,
infection control and all sorts of things.
And I remember when he was like due to be discharged, I almost like didn't want him to be discharged, because I thought, that's not my baby though. And I also felt scared of looking after him. I was like, I can't keep that baby safe.
Yeah, I really relate to that, because I remember with Nancy, where she went to special care, born at 34 weeks, I then went to see her, and where I was a midwife, I'd done that with women many times. I looked at Nancy and I thought, is that actually my baby? Like,
yeah.
are you sure it's not that one? Like, it was really strange, yeah.
Really weird.
But for anyone who's listening and worried about this, I don't know if you would agree, but I found skin to skin helped. And
I was going to say
that
next.
Because you can't, because they're in NICU, the nurses are really good, aren't they, at facilitating skin to skin.
Yeah.
Sometimes other things take priority, like brain scans and things, but the more you can do, the better you will feel. And it might just be that it's a bit more delayed than what you originally planned.
Yeah. I was going to say that. Yeah. That it's never too late.
It's never too late.
Then when Kit did get discharged, we literally spent like 2 weeks in bed. Like, and he was in a nappy and I was topless, and we like made up for all the time that we'd missed out. And I think
that's so nice.
It was so nice.
Yeah.
I have a photo like 2 days after we'd been home of me holding him, like, and having skin to skin. And it's probably one of my favorite photos with him, because it was a bit like, oh my God, baby, we did it. Like, we got through all of that like trauma, and like we're at home now. And like, and I think also remember taking that photo and thinking like, I actually really love him. Like, because not that I didn't love him before, but he felt like a little alien. Like, he wasn't like, he was my baby, but he wasn't my baby. It was weird.
And I think it's okay to say that you didn't feel connected with him straight away.
Yeah.
Like, you didn't feel bonded. Maybe you didn't feel love. Like, you knew he was yours to protect, but
yes. And I think that's key.
Love.
I wanted to keep him safe, but he just felt a bit like alien. And I think that's such a taboo thing to say, isn't it?
Yeah.
Like, and everyone, you don't want to say I didn't feel bonded to my baby, but I think quite a lot of people
do.
Not even who've had a traumatic birth, think we've had like quite a straightforward birth can feel like that as well, can't they? It's it's a crazy thing that you go through, whatever kind of birth, and your hormones are raging and all of this. So I think it's okay, and it can come. People talk about the instant rush of love, and I did have that with Harper, but it's okay if you don't have that.
Yeah,
because it will come.
Because we put a lot of focus on the golden hour, and we say how important it is for breastfeeding, and whilst that is so true, and it is important if you can to do that golden hour, but equally, if something else takes a priority, then that hour shouldn't be lost to you. Yeah, that golden time, like you said, you can do it at a later date when like safety and survival is not your priority. I said that wrong, but you know what I mean.
No, I know what you mean.
No longer your priority because it's given.
Yeah, because you are safe now.
Because you are safe.
Yeah. But and I think I felt quite a lot of sadness over that for a while, and I almost think in some ways, hypnobirthing alone, the first course that I did me a little bit dirty, because I think hypnobirthing, the hypnobirthing course that I did was very much structured around a vaginal birth, and I think because I then got that birth, I then felt like, I did it, like I passed hypnobirthing. And actually, I think when I came on to do the second course,
which was the bumps baby,
so the midwife-led one that combines everything, I think I realised that actually hypnobirthing has its place in all kinds of births.
Massively does.
And you said before, haven't you, like you think it actually might even be even more important if you're like having consultant-led or things are deviating from the plan, because that's when actually you feel this loss of control.
And you need something to keep for your own, and that's your breath, your visualizations, your birth affirmations, how you're reacting in that situation, like
informed choices.
Like there's so much that you can hold on to when you feel like you're losing control. And I think that you get that less with a straightforward birth. Like if you didn't do hypnobirthing on your first birth, it could have you may not have felt it may not have gone exactly the same, but that was the way your birth was projecting to go that time. So you kind of need less techniques because it's all going smoothly. Like, obviously, you could argue it both ways, but
I do think there is some degree of luck in birth, isn't there? Totally. Like, obviously, I think birth prep is really important, and I think that can it can help your birth, like oxytocin and keeping calm, and all these things are important. They can also be important in how you process your birth, but I think in how your birth actually goes. 100%. Some of it is just down to fate.
You can only stack the odds in your favour for a birth to go your way, but it's a two-way street, isn't it? Like your baby has got his own agenda. There's other things always going on, and I think it's really important to hold on to that you are only in control of what you can control.
Yeah, no, it's true though, isn't it? I know that sounds like a silly statement, but no, I get what you're saying. because they never found out why Kit's birth went so wild. Like, they thought maybe my placenta had started to die.
Yeah.
But they tested it and it hadn't. They did like they actually did an external investigation because at one point they were worried if he was gonna survive. So literally the moment he was born and taken to the NICU, this investigation was launched by the consultant. Yeah, but it wasn't kept sanitary because going back to me really wanting, I wanted it encapsulated. And I remember one of the first things the midwife said to me was, "I'm so sorry, I read your birth notes and it was too late because it has to be put like
straight in.
Yeah, it can't be like on a surface or in like the tray or whatever because it's not 100% sanitary." Or is that why?
Yeah, but also, imagine if it was kept sanitary and someone said to you, "We can choose to send off your placenta to pathology and see if it had an impact on Kit's birth, or you can take it home for encapsulation."
Yeah, I'd have chosen the first.
Yeah.
But I think that's the thing, this poor midwife, I think because I'd had everything taken away from me, I think she felt like, and I've just also taken something else away. But at this point, I really didn't care. I was like, that's fine. Like, don't worry about it. But I remember like, I could see like the guilt in her face, like as she told me that she'd throw it, like it not gone in there. And I was like, I'd forgotten I even had a placenta.
I've done, I'm not necessarily, I haven't necessarily tried bit silly things, but one couple that I looked after, they were coming in for an elective caesarean, and their main thing on their birth plan was that they wanted, because this happened with their first caesarean, their second, they didn't know the gender, and they wanted the gender to be found out by a hat reveal. So me as a midwife had to take the baby away, wrap the baby and put a coloured hat on it.
That's nice, but it's not going this way, is it?
Such a nice idea. So I took the baby over to the resuscitator, drying it, weighing it as they wanted. But the baby was screaming and crying. And I was thinking, everyone was silent because nobody wanted to speak, because nobody wanted to be the person that let out the reveal. But I was there thinking, they're going to think I'm doing something awful to their newborn baby because she's screaming the place down here. And I said, "Don't worry, I'm just weighing her." And I thought, "Oh, I've just said her." And the whole team looked at me like,
"What have you done?"
But and then I took the baby round. I'm so sorry. But the dad heard, but the mum, I don't know whether she heard and she just knew.
Being nice.
She was just being nice to me. But she was like, "Oh, don't worry, I didn't even notice." So either way, like, she was fine about it. And I'm sure that would be a funny story for them.
Yeah.
But yeah, I just felt just like the world to swallow me up. Like,
it's a lot for midwives and doctors though, isn't it?
Yeah.
And again, like, this midwife's job was to like look after me and Kit, not necessarily to make sure I got my placenta to take home.
There's a lot of plates to spin.
And obviously my birthday was a lot of plates to spin. So I was like, please don't worry.
But also you want to prioritise your birth preferences, but then you're equally prioritising like safety and everything as well. Like it's hard sometimes to spin it all.
Yeah.
So
I should probably add that Kit is all good now. So he's 2.5. So obviously we went through all of that. And he was discharged from the NICU and then he was discharged from pediatrics. So he is amazing. And it's amazing how resilient babies can be, I think. Because we went through all of that. And I never, ever in a million years thought that I would have a seemingly very healthy 2.5-year-old. That doesn't seem to have any impacts from his birth.
So do you feel like hypnobirthing helped you in both of your births?
100%.
Yeah.
But I think the addition of antenatal education was key. I think if I'd have done, in fact, I don't think, I'm almost 100% sure, if I'd have just done my in-person just hypnobirthing and had the birth I had with Kit, I think I'd have been way more traumatized than what I was. Yeah. Because I think I'd have felt like I failed. And I had a friend who did just hypnobirthing in the same course that I did. And she ended up having...
First course.
Yeah, the same first course, just to make that clear. She ended up having a episiotomy and forceps.
Yes.
And I remember weeks later, I literally was on top of the world, feeling a bit smug because I'd had this amazing vaginal birth. And I remember her saying, talking about her forceps birth and saying, well, I almost like I failed. And I remember being heartbroken because I thought, haven't failed. Like, what are you talking about? Like, you've given birth. However you give birth, whether it's abdominally, vaginally, with a bit of help, that's birth, isn't it? You've done something amazing.
Birth is a one part of a massive journey, isn't it? Like, you've got, you know, conceiving, pregnancy, birth, like the 4th trimester. Like, it's one big thing that as women we do. And it's so sad that your friend felt that way.
Really sad. And actually, I think it was because the sort of hypnobirthing that we did was just so geared around having a vaginal birth, and it didn't really cover much else. And it was also a bit, you know, try and don't have any sweeps, avoid induction as much as you can, when actually all those things have their place.
Yeah.
You know, if that's your choice to want to avoid those things, I think that's great.
Yeah.
But as long as you're making informed choices and it's not from like scaremongering and fear, you're doing it because you believe it's right for you and your baby. It's your research led.
100%. I couldn't agree more. Like, I find it really hard because you read a lot on the internet, social media. There's loads around, and it's really hard to read, you know, when a mainstream message to avoid inductions are always bad.
Yeah.
Because it's so narrow-minded and not individualized.
Yeah.
Because for certain people or situations, yes, induction's overused, but actually it's a very, very necessary part.
Yeah, absolutely.
Of, you know, some people's births.
And we've been advised that if we are to have a 3rd baby, I did ask a consultant because I'm just an overthinker. So when I had a conversation with a consultant after Kit's birth, I said, what would your advice be for me if I have another baby? I think because I thought I'm the kind of person, I want all the information before I choose to have a
And you
baby.
are considering, aren't you?
We are considering, yeah. And I'm pretty sure I'll have an elective C-section, which means I'll have experienced
the full shebang.
I'll have ordered all 3. But yeah, and I feel like that's a very informed choice. Yeah. But I think years ago when I had my first baby, I would have probably thought that was like failure. Like, I don't want a cesarean because that's the worst kind of birth you can have when it's not. Like, I actually am quite looking forward to having a calm cesarean if we are fortunate enough to have another baby. I think it can be done really well, can't it? And that will probably be the safest thing for me and the baby. So
yeah, nice. So Jamie,
yes.
To wrap up our podcast, what advice would you give to your children when they are expecting, if they choose, when they are expecting their first baby? What advice would you give them?
Okay, I'm going to do 2. I'm going to do one to help them with birth and one to help them with parenthood. So my one for birth it's my favorite affirmation, and it is, you are strong enough to walk whatever path your birth takes.
Oh.
And I had that in my head in both my births, because I think it's really important for us to remember that we are amazing. We are birthers, and whatever path our birth takes, like, we can do it. Like, we are strong, aren't we? And so I think that's probably my advice, is to just remember that even if things deviate from the plan, like, you can do it, and you will do it, and it will be okay. Then my advice for parenting, it probably links a bit more to like my budgeting stuff that I share on TikTok, is to not fall into the comparison trap. I think it's so easy in a time of social media. And I really fell into this when I had my first baby, which was the motivation behind why I started the things that I do, was that I looked at everyone else and I just thought everyone else was doing better than I was. They had more money than me. They had cleaner homes than me. They were better mothers than me. And I actually had postnatal depression with my first baby. And I think that was a massive contributor to it. She also cried all the time, but that's by the by. And I think it's just important to remember that actually, like, in your lane, you're fine. And often there are things going on for other people that we don't know about. Yeah. People only share, not just on social media, but even like your friends face to face. They might not share all their lows with you. And I think it's important to remember that, like, you're doing just fine where you are. And I want my kids to just be happy and just think, I'm good here.
I'm good in my
I'm not worse than anyone else. I'm good.
So your birth story is on the Bumps Baby Chapter blog. So I'll share that link in the description for anyone who wants to have another read through or save it or whatever. And where can people find you if they want to know more about your budgeting tips and all that jazz?
They can find me on TikTok at SabbyJamie and on Instagram at SabbyJamieRose.
Lovely. Thank you for coming today, Jamie.
Thank you so much for having me. I've had the best time.